Hello, welcome back to the Story Hour podcast, Voices Unscripted, Stories Rewritten with your host, Sara, a registered counselor, certified grief educator, and a certified life coach. Also a lover of the human experience, and I'm very deeply passionate about getting to know you on a soul level, where you come from, what challenges you had, and just all the fun things, the transformation. And we're going to jump right into it. Today, I have a special guest with me who is a fellow therapist, but more importantly, she's a very dear, dear friend. If you've been around for a while, you know who she is. If not, I'm going to introduce her and we're just going to chat all things. We're going to see where the conversation takes us. We'll talk about counseling, we'll talk about just all the things, just life and all of that. So, Harjeet Thiara is a counselor and private practice owner of One Truth Wellness Plus Counseling in Vancouver, BC. With a background in clinical counseling and holistic wellness, her work focuses on identity, mental health, and whole person healing. Harjeet supports individuals navigating attachment wounds, anxiety, life transitions, and survival based patterns with a strong emphasis on cultural awareness and depth. She blends evidence based therapy with holistic and esoteric approaches, believing that true healing honors both pain and potential. She is passionate about deep conversations, diverse cultures and religions, comedy, and personal growth. Harjeet is committed to helping people access their truest selves while building lives that feel aligned, embodied, and meaningful. Hi, Harj. Welcome.
Hi. Hi. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to chat. I've got good sunshine in today. It was sunny, had coffee. I'm ready to go.
Amazing, amazing. I love that. Just for reference, if anyone's wondering, we'll probably go between Harjeet and Harj. Harjeet's her real
Yeah.
name, and then I've known her as Harj always. Maybe we'll start off by talking about how we met. Before we
Yeah.
go into all that, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but I think it's just really important and just fun. Harj and I, to be honest, have conversations all the time. So this is like hopefully just going to be another one of those. And so I just figured why not bring her on and just chat with you all, with everyone. And so Harj and I met, how long ago? 4 years?
I think it's been time
Oh,
is
five
flying really
years.
fast. 5 years?
2021. Yeah.
2021, that's right. We both enrolled into the Rhodes Wellness program at the same time, and we were put in the same cohort. It was like magic. We like from the day that we started connecting till like now, we've like never not talked. So yeah, we've
Yeah.
had fun going strong.
Totally. It was 5 years ago. Yeah, 2021. We rolled in the counseling program and we were in the same cohort. Like it was just, yeah, everything about it was so magical. Everything was online. This is a funny story, which I think I'll share. Our school was online. So, whatever, everything, we were on Zoom and stuff. But Harj and I didn't meet. So we started in January. We didn't meet until like April or May, I think. We just like really started hitting it off in
In
breakout
person.
rooms. We were paired, I
Yeah,
think, quite a bit. And then we started
yeah,
to realize that we had very similar beliefs and just values and outlook. So it was like, oh my gosh, like we need to meet in person. And
yeah.
so I didn't have a license at that time. So Harj was like, oh, I'll come pick you up. So she comes, picks me up. We've never seen each other. Obviously, when you're on video, and even now, you can only see our neck up, basically. And so I get out of the house, and Harj looks at me, and the first thing she says is like, "Whoa, you're so tall." It was so funny because obviously I am tall, but I also didn't know Harj was really tall. So until we got to
You
the
didn't
beach,
know? I guess you
sorry?
never talked about it, right?
I don't think so.
I don't
No,
think so.
because on Zoom, you don't really, I don't know, it just never comes up. And like, I can't really tell by looking at you now
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
were
and I
tall.
had no idea you were tall, and it's so rare to see another, like, brown girl that's 5'10" that is just as tall as you are, and I see her coming out of her house, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's tall," and I remember that was the first thing that I said, and then I get out of the car when we get to the beach, and you're like, "You're so tall."
Oh my God, it was so funny. It was, yeah, it just
Funny, but it
clicked.
was funny.
It totally clicked. Anyway, since then, honestly, yeah, like Harj was saying, we haven't looked back. And I don't know, I just think that's such a beautiful story. And you meet people later in life and they just click. And honestly, we probably knew each other like in another lifetime. For
Yeah,
sure. I
we've
feel like
definitely been in the same rooms, in the same scene for sure, like, we've definitely walked past each other.
absolutely. I was just telling a friend, I was actually telling Alicia this, Serena's friend. because she was
Oh, yeah.
asking me like how I knew you. And I told her, and I'm like, honestly, we were in the same parties, the same places, the same everything. I'm like, I am sure we were like side by side at one point.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Anyway, just a
Yeah.
fun little story and background. So cool. Here we are 5 years later. Now we're recording a podcast together. Like, whoa.
Life.
Life, yes. Okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about the story. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We know obviously you're a counselor and a little bit about
Mhm.
what you do, but what else could you share about who Harjeet is? What do you love?
Uh,
What are some fun facts?
these fun facts. Okay. So, that's a really good question. I don't know if I have any fun facts, but I just have a lot of facts. I would say that I grew up in like a traditional family, Punjabi family. I grew up in a small town of Ladner, BC. Really interesting experience growing up in a small town that is like predominantly of a different culture than yours, but it's been, I don't know, one of the best things ever. What else did I say? I've always known that I've wanted to be a counselor. I think since high school, I've always been a little bit more on the emotional side as a kid. Like I'm the youngest of three with like an age gap between me and my siblings, and I'd always kind of grew up in my own little worlds, right? Like figuring out like who I am and what I like. And I always kind of veered more towards like sensitive souls and people that were a little bit more like empathy was really high. And I think as a kid, I really like resonated with that. And so I just have this like memory that's popping up in my head right now. I remember in high school, I used to like just go to the counselor's office. I remember his name was Mr. Futchko, and I used to go there because like I thought it was fun to just go and like talk to an adult. And like, I don't know, he would just really get a lot out of me. And we'd have these like really deep conversations. And on the one hand, I was like, cool, I got to skip class. But at the same time, I really just recognized like my soul always craved that depth. And so even in like a high school setting, I was always looking for that. And the only place I could find that was with the therapist, right? For our grade. And so that really meant something to me because that helped shape my like emotional capacity. That helped shape my depth of conversation with people. And I knew from that time that I want to do this also. And then obviously, as things go, you graduate, you lose touch with a lot of that stuff, right? You go to these parties that Sarah and I are talking about. You start to disconnect from your soul's purpose and focus a lot more on like this mainstream idea of fun and connection, which, you know, in hindsight, like it served its purpose. It's a lot of fun, but it wasn't actually connection. And I can say that looking back. But I'm a huge lover of music. I really love just like squeezing the juice and having fun in life. And I find a lot of things, most things pretty funny. I feel like there's comedic relief in most things. And yeah, I'm just like a lover of learning a lot. I love to just always be obtaining new knowledge. I've always been described as someone with a curious mind, like insanely curious. And I think it's just like this love for learning. And so that's just a little bit about me. I've got a small little dog that I absolutely love. He's my pride and joy, and a really awesome family and good friends like yourself. And yeah, just discovering myself now as a business owner and kind of unveiling that chapter of my life.
Love
So,
it. I love everything you shared. And yeah, I was going to come to that of like what made you want to pursue counseling. And maybe we'll touch on that in a bit more depth. But yeah, so since high school, you kind of knew that this is where I'm like meant to be. I love that you
yeah.
just like went and chatted with a therapist at that age. How old are like early high school days or like later?
I'd say like probably grade 9, I was really like, okay, cool. Like I have kind of got an understanding of what this high school thing is like, but I felt like I was constantly looking for something that I wasn't finding. Like there was this part of me that I really just wanted to have more in-depth conversations. And there wasn't really access to that. And I grew up, obviously, you know, we grew up in a household, a brown household, where like emotions aren't really discussed, right? We talk about a lot of other things that we don't talk about emotions. I think I was really looking for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that in our school counselor. And I just literally made him my best friend because I loved just dropping in and being like, hey, like let's talk. Here's things that are going on for me. And he was always so invested in what my experience was like. One, I think as a high schooler, one, I
Mhm.
think as a female, like a, you know, teenage girl, but also as a woman that was coming in from, I mean, a young girl that was from one cultural background in a school where I was a huge minority.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting though, because even though I was a huge minority, there was a lot of us. There was actually a handful of us that all kind of found each other and like really clicked pretty hard. But it was, yeah, it was a really cool experience and just being able to have those in-depth conversations with someone like a school therapist
Yeah.
and realizing like, hey, actually, I think I want to do this.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back. Let's talk about coaching for a little bit because I think that plays
Yeah.
into a part of how what led you to go into counseling and how you found your way into our cohort
Ooh.
in 2021. And I
Yeah.
feel like that kind of started your helping profession, and coaching and counseling are obviously very different, but it kind of
Mhm.
led you there from what you've shared. And take us back to your first coaching days. Like, what led you to even become a certified life coach at that time?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome question. My journey to coaching started, I think it was 2017. Well, actually, it kind of started when I hired my first coach, which was Ruby Freeman. And I believe her and I started working together in like 2016, 2015, 2016. And I had become a client of hers for a few years. And at that time, I was going through a major identity shift, I would say, like coming out of a relationship and going through, I would say, an identity shift, but also a transition in my life at that time because there was a lot of endings that were happening for me in 2015, 2016. I was moving out of my career choice at the time, which was PR, public relations, working in government, startups, and all that. And I was trying to find something of more meaning in my life. And then lo and behold, I find this coach, and she walked me through this beautiful transition that was happening. And it inspired that old teenage self again that knew that she wanted to do something that was connected to people and walking people through some of those more difficult parts of life.
Mhm.
And the transformation that I experienced in myself in that journey was like that was really, really exciting. Um, I figured out where she went to school and I was like, sign me up. And I went to Rhodes, I think in 2018. I did like their 6-month part-time program, was awesome. I loved it. I specialized a little bit in like relationship transitions. So anyone that was going through the grief process of that, I was doing that part time. I loved it. I knew though it was a couple of years that I was running that on the side of my full time work, and there was a deeper desire in me that was saying like go deeper. I want to know more, and that's what brought me back to counseling. So
Mhm.
coaching was like what started everything, and then that whole transformation actually led me to come back to Rhodes in 2021.
I love that. I love that so much. And I'm curious, how old were you around that time? You said 2016, 2017?
Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me do math.
The reason why I'm curious is just for anyone who's listening too, is like you said, you were going through like an identity shift, you're going through this
Yeah.
transition, and you weren't fulfilled with the job that you were
25 or 26.
25,
Sorry.
26. Yeah.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I'm like, that was literally just about 10, 11 years ago, and, yeah, so I would have been 25, 26 in that frame, going on 27, so in that sort of
Mhm.
mid to later 20s.
Which I think is just really important to even touch on because a lot of us later in life go through these identity crises or transitions, and looking at your life and, being in a job that may have been great, that you enjoyed, and it was, great for what it was, but there was something in you, like you mentioned, that was like, there's more, there's something more. And I feel like a lot of us have that, but a lot of times what happens is the fear stops us. We get scared. We don't know what to do. I know that was a big part of why I didn't move and I got stuck 10 and a half, almost 11 years in the first career I had before counseling as well, was there's so much fear and we feel like we should have our lives figured out by a certain time frame. But like, what's 25? That's so young. We're not even fully developed at that
Yeah,
time,
I
brain-wise.
know. wild to think about. When I think about that time, the best way I can describe my life up until 25 was, in some ways, I would say unconscious, and not intentionally, but literally because of where our development tends to be around those ages. Like, you're so focused on your friendships and having fun, and you're so focused on, like, doing the things that you're presented with options to do, right? Like, get the job, find, a partner, do the things that are part of the structure. But it's so wild that we do that so quickly because we don't know life yet at that point. And my life was so focused on just having the best time ever, and I don't regret that, because I think that's very much what that time is supposed to be for. And it wasn't until, like, life started to get a little bit more challenging, right, with these transitions. And I think that when we shift over to the later years of our 20s, our consciousness starts to awaken, right? We become more intentional, and all of a sudden we look around and we go, "Oh yeah, actually, I don't know if I'm with this anymore. I don't know if this is me anymore." And we still have that vigor and that sort of a little bit of fearlessness in our 20s to just go after some of
Mhm.
these things. So I feel like there was a lot of fire. I was fueled a lot as well to make those big changes. And actually, as I'm saying this, I'm also recognizing that doesn't stop happening in life either.
True.
Especially in these cycles of like 5 years, 10 years, like, we're constantly shaking things up and saying, "Hey, like, what lands for me now and what needs to shift?" So, I think that was pivotal because it was the first time. That was, like, the first identity shift
Yeah.
that I actually questioned and said, "Hey, what's right for me anymore for me at this point?" And that was sort of when I actually stopped going out, like, clubbing. That's when I
Mhm.
stopped, like, nightlife, partying, going out, any of that. It just no longer fit this next identity shift that was happening. So it was, yeah, it was a really interesting time.
Yeah, I love that. And I think just, yeah, for anyone listening, like it doesn't matter how old you are. We're talking about 25, 26 age frame because that's your story, but it can be anything. Like I went back to school at 34 and I remember being like, What? This is crazy." But it's just what we are, just societal too, right? It's like age. We get so afraid of aging and what that means. But who is to say that you can't go and do these things at 50 or 60 or, whatever age it is? I think we need to break that system that we've built and what we're just born into, right? And taught because
Yeah,
things change. And yeah, like life is only beginning at 25, 30. You hear that from
yeah,
people all the time. It's like you just start to really figure out who you are, what you believe in, what your values are, what brings you joy, what doesn't, what drains your energy, what does light you up. And so I think like even if you're going through this and you're like, you know what, I can relate to what Harj is saying, or even what I'm sharing is like, you can change at any time. It's going to take work, right? But it's possible. And I think we put limits on ourselves all the time and it holds us back. But if there's something that's calling you, like you're going to know that internally, you are going to feel that. Like Harj was saying too, there's something in you is like, I need more, I need depth, I need, all of this. And so it's like that happens and happens until you come to a point where you're like, I either need to listen to this intuition or I let it go and I'm stuck in this
yeah.
unfulfilled life that I know is not fulfilling me because you're not happy.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I'm the most passionate about, is helping people at any stage in their life, at any age, and helping them see, like, you do not have to settle right here. You do not have to settle for this if you are not happy. You are always allowed to reinvent yourself, no matter what age, no matter what your circumstance is, no matter what anyone tells you. You should always be allowing yourself, and I know it's hard because we have so many things that sort of weigh on us that prevent us from sometimes making those steps, but I'm always gonna be that person that says, "Do it."
Mhm.
Like, do it, make the change, do the thing that you really wanna
Yeah.
do, and again, it doesn't matter who you are, what age you are.
Totally. And I think what like kind of comes to a point you think, what's worse? Like, do I try and lean into this, even though there's fear? Because like Harj was saying too, fear is always going to be there. Like there's fear in
Mhm.
your chapter in 25, but it doesn't say that you haven't had fear since. Like that's just life. And I think what the goal is to work with that fear and not try to push it away because the more we push away fear, the stronger and louder it's going to come back. But it's leaning into those things, because the other option is not leaning into it, but your soul, your heart is craving it so much. And then you're also not happy that way. So it's like, why not just take the leap? And you never know what doors are going to open, what opportunities are going to come through, where life is going to take you. I do believe that we are meant to take these steps. And there's no such thing as failure, which I've had to work through, because there's a lot of shame, like, oh, well, I failed and this and that. But you don't fail. It's a step forward. You learn from that, right? If it didn't work out, then you pivot. It's like, okay, that didn't work out. That wasn't really what I wanted to do. And like, what else can we do? And I think that's where the growth happens. That's where the transformation happens, is when we step outside our comfort zone and we get comfortable being uncomfortable and allow ourselves to shine, use our voice, be creative, those things that really spark something in us. That's where the meaning of life comes from.
Yeah, you're talking about how like you basically are at a crossroads when you're in a position like that. I can go in one direction, do the thing that I really want, or I can let fear take the driving wheel and not go in that direction. But what I always think and say is the time's going to pass anyway.
Mhm.
That time is going to pass anyway. And that actually has always helped me reframe when I'm making a decision about something, whether it's going back to school, whether it's opening a business, or whether it's like having a certain conversation, the time is going to pass anyway. So if it's going to take 2 years or 3 years or 4 years to get that education that you want, well, that 2, 3, 4 years is gonna pass anyway. Why not choose the thing that you wanna do, right? And I think about that all the time, like, that time is gonna pass anyway. So, would you look back and say that, "I wish that I had done this with that time?" I remember a really funny story when I was considering going back to school, and I think in 2021, I would have been, like, gosh, like 31 or 32. I don't know, I can't think on the spot. But I remember talking to somebody and saying, "Yeah, I'm thinking about going back to school, and it's gonna be a few years." And I remember this person said to me, and full disclosure, this was someone on a dating app. This was like a text message conversation. And this person said, "Oh, you're looking to go back to school now? And you're not gonna be done until you're, like, what, 34? And so, what are your thoughts on settling down and, like, being a wife and being a mom?" And I just remember looking at that and going, "Unmatched, this is not working," because if that's the mindset, oh my gosh, like, who's to say that those things can't happen simultaneously while you do all the other things too, right? I hate anything that puts those limits on it, and I go, "That time is gonna pass anyway." So
Mm.
the next 4 years, the next 3 years, whatever it is, if you look back, do you wish that you would have fulfilled it with that desire that you had? So anyhow, that's a
I
long way of
I
saying
actually really know, I like that. I like what you shared about that. It's like that it's true. The time is going to pass whether we like it or not. And like I said, if there's something calling you and it's speaking to you and your heart is trying to grab your attention, your intuition, your soul, it's going to keep coming up and it's going to get louder and louder until something really big happens, or like it's not going to go away. I don't feel like those callings go away. I think they're meant to stir something within us, and it's pushing us to take the leap, take the courage and step into the unknown. And that's the biggest thing. And I struggle with this a lot, like quite chronically, I would say, is fear of the unknown. And I
Mhm.
think that's what happens to most of us, is we're so crippled by that, is we want to know exactly what's going to happen, and is it going to play out? Is it going to be worth it? And then we get so caught up in that fear of the unknown, and it can take you to some dark places. Like I have to say, right? Like I've been there and I still go through that sometimes, because I'm the type that I just want to know everything. But then when I pull back and I'm like, what's the fun in that? What would
Mhm.
life look like if each and every one of us knew exactly what was going to happen from the moment we're born to the moment we die? If we knew exactly the outcome of everything, like there's no surprise to that. And you would never know like the contrast. You would never really know what joy and happiness felt like, because you wouldn't know the opposite of it. And I think that's what we talk about. All emotions are so important and they're so valid, because you wouldn't know one without the other. Even darkness
Yeah.
and light. We wouldn't know sun and a beautiful bright day if we didn't have the darkness. And so I think a lot of times people get really stuck, and it can be really hard, but I think it's really important to lean into that for sure.
Totally. Yeah, and that's growth. Like if we were to know exactly how this whole thing was going to play out, we wouldn't actually be challenged enough to grow. And that's the one thing that in these moments where things feel really, really challenging, or you feel like nothing is moving, this is usually an opportunity to grow. If there's a lot of fear there, that's an opportunity to grow. And we talk about it when, we're sitting in our program, is that post-traumatic growth, the thing that you have to actually meet, and that thing that you have to process and go through and experience and come out on the other side. There's this beautiful life that's waiting for you. It's almost like a high, right? When you level up through those challenges and those hard times, my goodness, it can be such an incredible experience. And I think it comes back to what our individual beliefs are
Mhm.
on earth too, right? I'm a huge believer that we've all been born and have come here to earth school. Like this is something that we are here, our souls are here to expand, our souls are here to experience what, is on our soul contract. And there is immense amount of growth that I think is different for each person, but it's unique to them. And I do think that it's a bit of a school, right? Every time you sort of get to the next level, you're like, I've learned something about myself, I've learned something about humanity. And I think we're here to have that experience. So we could try to escape it and make everything super easy, but I just don't see that as fruitful.
I love that Earth School.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
one. Yeah, oh my gosh, so much there. But let's transition into, want to go back into the counseling. And I think this is a very pivotal moment in your journey as well, and what actually made you take that final step. Um, just, I guess, to share about your mom. I know that was a big reason why you ended up enrolling into the program, and it was kind of last minute, I think, couple of weeks you were saying
Super.
before.
Yeah.
I think it's important to bring that forward and talk about that. So you can share what that was,
Mhm.
what the experience was, and why you just, in the spur of the moment, took that leap of faith and was like, I'm just going to enroll in this program. And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I
what?
feel
Yeah,
like that wasn't that long ago, even though I know it was.
yeah.
Like it was just yesterday, but, um, yeah, internally, it was a long time coming. Externally, it seemed very quick.
Mm,
Uh, but I would say that, yeah, so we come 2020, and this kind of comes back to what we were saying about your calling. When there's a calling towards something, it's only so long before you can actually ignore it, and I think this was one of those moments, and my mom and I talk about this, that I was always meant to go in this direction, but it's like I just kept going in different directions, right? Just ignoring that true calling because that calling felt like it was too big, and I doubted it a lot, and I would always go in these other directions that would lead me back. And I would say that my experience with my mom in 2020 was no different. The calling just became too big to not answer. So she, it, I remember it very specifically. It was January of 2020. Our family had just come back from celebrating her 60th birthday in Mexico. And as soon as we had landed back at YVR, there was this huge disruption of like COVID. Okay, so now there's all this stuff going on, and we're like, oh, okay, we're going through lockdowns and things like that. So there's that one challenge that's coming up. And shortly after, just a few months after all of that, my mom got a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, stage 4 breast cancer. And the breast cancer had metastasized to her liver and like throughout her lymph nodes, and it was spread. This was a huge shock because we weren't aware that my mom had this. Like everything was healthy, she was good, in a good place. And next thing you know, she goes in to get a test, just like her regular procedure, and it comes back. And we're going to see the oncologist. And I remember that moment specifically. We're sitting at the Surrey Cancer Agency, and the oncologist looks at me and my mom, and he goes, yeah, so Mrs. Thiara, you have stage 4 breast cancer and it has spread to your liver, and your liver is like literally littered with tumors and it's everywhere. So radiation is out of the picture. And I just remember we're sitting there frozen, like we did not anticipate it to be this bad. I remember that day we were like, okay, we'll go, we'll see what they have to say. Since we're out here in Surrey, maybe we'll go for lunch after. Like we had a very different mindset going in. And then when we came out of that appointment, and I remember the doctor just looking at us point blank, very matter of fact, no emotion, just matter of fact. He's like, I would say maybe 1 to 3 years prognosis. And he grabs his clipboard and he walks out the door and he goes, okay, I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to talk about this. And he left. And I remember looking at my mom and she looks at me and she goes, I immediately saw like her inner child. And she looked at me and said, what just happened? What did he just say about me? And I just remember seeing her inner child. And I was very much in shock. And I said, Mom, you have stage 4 breast cancer, and he's giving you 1 to 3 years. Like, I didn't even know what I was saying at that point. And I remember walking out of that appointment, not knowing what we were even gonna do at this point. Like, you go in thinking, you've come back from Mexico, you're like enjoying life, everything is good, okay, whatever, this annoying pandemic. But now you're dealing with something that is it sounds like it's got an end date to your mom's life, and we're close. That was the beginning of such a deep healing journey for both her and I and my whole family. And we just threw everything that we had at this. I remember just being like, okay, I got to step up and got to figure out what we're going to do. And through her healing journey, there was a lot of stuff for me that came through. And I remember really spiritually connecting at this point in my life, and like spending that time with her, really dedicated to like learning her and knowing her and things about her that I didn't know, understanding her entire upbringing. Like, this journey of cancer brought us to a place where, one, you're in do or die. So you're kind of in this, like, I was in a fight stage
Hmm.
in the system. And that fight stage was like, I got to put everything aside and like help her attack this thing because I can't lose her. And it became this, like, put things into motion. Okay, I started doing inventory of my life. What needs to go? What do I need to incorporate? I need to get serious about my intentions about life, because here was this end date that we kept getting told. And I thought to myself, I want my mom to see me at my best. If she's going to go, I want to know that, she saw me through everything I had at life and actually go through my purpose and fulfill it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if I'm going to go back to school, now's the time, because I would want her to see me working the job that I'm so passionate about. She's seen me do everything. She's seen me work corporate. She's seen me work in all these positions in life, going back to school for all these things. But she knew and I knew what my calling was. And so I had set an intention internally, like, I think it's time to start getting serious about school and about my next career move. And then next thing you know, I get a call from a Rhodes advisor, Diane, and I remember she said, "Hey, I'm calling you just because you were in our program like a number of years ago." And it's crazy because it's not like I had asked to be in touch, but she happened to call.
Hmm.
And she's, "You were in the coaching program 4 years ago. I'm actually just following up with you and seeing if you actually want to do counseling." And it's crazy because I always say our thoughts are not private. And so when that intention occurs, I think these pieces get moved and the people that are meant to hear what you're thinking will show up. And she said, we have a few spots. We have like 3 spots open in a cohort starting in 2 weeks. And I remember exactly where I was. I was in my bedroom. It's my childhood bedroom, and I remember sitting on the bed and I'm holding up the phone, I'm looking out the window, and this woman is basically giving me the exact information that I was thinking about this entire time. And she said, it's available to you like in 2 weeks. And the crazy thing is, she had also gone through this journey herself as a cancer survivor. And so she was able to connect with me on this level. And I just decided to go for it, Sarah. I didn't tell her, give me 24 hours, nothing. I said, you know what? Let's just do this. Let's do this. Maybe give me till tonight or something, but I'm in. And that was it. 2 weeks later, next thing you know, I'm in a coaching course. There you are. And is the same ever since then. And thank God, my mom is good. She's okay, but she was like, now she's free of cancer. She doesn't
Yeah.
have, it's been 6 years and that prognosis was completely false.
Hmm.
And these moments are so, so pivotal when you're calling. Sometimes your calling is gonna come in the most intense ways, and
Mm.
you gotta know when to answer the call. If I had said no, goodness gracious me, I don't know what I would have been doing at this moment.
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
We wouldn't be.
I
Yeah,
we
exactly. We
like, full
wouldn't
stop.
know you.
We would, yeah, I wouldn't even know who Harj is. Like, we wouldn't have had
Yeah.
this beautiful 6-year friendship and none of it. You wouldn't be sitting here on the podcast sharing this story, and it could have gone a different way. I think a lot
Yeah.
of times it's easy to say no or to put ourselves second, as you would think like, oh, this is about mom, this isn't about me. And it would be like, oh, we have too much going on, I can't enroll in a program right now, an intense program, there's no way, I got to be home, I got to step up for my mom. But it's like you took that, because you said, I love what you said, thoughts aren't private. And I love that, because I do believe that whether you believe in God or your soul or someone or something, the universe rearranges things to make that happen. And it just happened
Mhm.
that there was only, you said, 3 spots left. The program was full. We had a full cohort.
We
There
had a
wasn't
full
much
cohort.
room left in our cohort. We had the biggest cohort too.
Yeah. Yeah, and the timing of this is what really surprises me because when she got diagnosed, I was the only one in our family at that time that wasn't working full time because I had left my job and then the COVID happened and nobody was hiring. So I was like at home with her and I was able to put everything that I had at that time into being there with her, and
Mhm.
it was interesting because in that time, I was able to see how important it is to actually, like, go with life and do the thing that you need to do because it can be taken from you like this, and I think in that, like, that time that I had with her, that depth that her and I shared every single day, it's like we were doing different things, whether it was going to her appointments or going out for food or walks, like, we were just doing everything that we could in alignment with like the mandates and all that kind of stuff, but it gave me an opportunity to get really intentional about my life and for her to like really pour into me what it is that she wants to see from me. And I
Mhm.
took that as another life transition moment, like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to do this program. It was from home, so it was perfect that I could, still be there with her, but also pour my focus into what it is that I wanted to create next in my life. And boom, there it all was. And it's crazy because going back to that whole idea of the time is gonna pass anyway,
Mhm.
these past 6 years would have passed anyway, and at the end of it, I'm going, I finished school, I built a beautiful relationship with clients, I built a business, and she healed. Had
Mhm.
I not taken this step, I would have been sitting here empty going, "I should have done that," right? So it always tends to somehow, some way work out in the end,
Mhm.
but we do have to take that step when the call is loud and clear.
That's such a beautiful, I love that. And yeah, your mom is amazing. I love her so much. I think it was like, you and I hit it off from the beginning. Your mom and I hit it off from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, she's just
Yeah, she's
such a,
just one of the girls, like
yeah, she's such a sweet soul, and she's fully cleared, you said, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And I think there's so much there. But what I want to pull on is talk about the grief a little bit, but also the death as being, I always say this, death is one of our greatest teachers, if not the biggest teacher that we have. And what you shared is a testament to that, right? Death was basically at your doorstep, in your family's doorstep. And it was like you took that moment and was like, what do I need to shift? What needs to be dropped? What needs to be let go? What am I wasting my time on that's going to not matter at all? My mom might possibly die, but like, what is all the shit baggage that I'm carrying that actually in the grand scheme doesn't matter at all? And it sounds like you
Yeah.
took that and you cleared out what wasn't working and you really leaned into that calling, because like you said, it never goes away, right? We said it gets louder and stronger. This has been going on, you said, since high school, like way back,
Yeah.
right? Like years and years. And it's like it finally came to you in the most unexpected way. If you look at it on paper, it's like, well, that's not a good time. But it's like,
Mhm.
you look at death and you look at, I always say this all the time, if I were to die today, like what would my regrets be? And I think that's such a powerful, reflective question, because we put things off because we think we have time and we think it's all going to work out later. But I just think that's such a good example of that is, well, no, the time is now. And like you said, going back to the time's going to pass anyways.
It couldn't have been a better time.
Yeah.
It couldn't have worked out in a better time because I say that just because I feel like when I look back, there couldn't have been a better time because I don't know if I would have had as much fire and intention behind what I was doing
Mhm.
if it was any other time where everything was perfect. And
Right.
I think that it meant so much more for me. This whole line of work meant so much more for me because of what was at my doorstep.
Mhm.
And I think it actually brought so much more healing into my life in a time that I really needed it. And also in a time that I think my mom needed it too, because my training and what I was learning in school, I was able to share with her and she was able to move through some stuff too. So yeah, like you said, on paper, it's kind of a crazy time for all this to happen. But in the grand scheme, it was like, it couldn't have been a better time because it was at the right time where everything had to, the pieces were all there.
Yeah, I love that so much. I just want to touch on this a little bit because obviously around grief, right? Because that's something I talk about in just death, dying, grief, and loss. And I think you have such a, like your story is just so profound and you know what you had to go through with your mom and all that. And you had touched on it that you were home. So you were taking care of her, going to appointments and whatnot. How, just for anyone who's listening, having someone close to you go through a life altering diagnosis and then having to care for them, how did your role change going from being the daughter to then now, you know, full time caregiver? What was that experience like for you? Anything that you could share to bring awareness to it and even just shed light on what that's like? Because a lot of people have to play caregiver to their family. So I'm curious of what that was like for
It was,
you.
it was hard. It was really hard. Um, I definitely experienced caregiver burnout.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely had this part of me that felt like I was responsible for saving her life. Like I feel like I had this thing in me where I don't want to say maybe it was a little bit of panic that like I have to just do everything in my power. I'm also blessed though that I have a family that, you know, I have siblings and a sister-in-law and a dad. And I think everyone sort of did what they had access to and what they could. And I think for me, with my mom, we've always just had a really, really close connection. And so the two of us had always just had that. But it felt for me like I had to just take this on and I needed to put everything that I had into it. And so it was really challenging. I don't think there's any other way to put it. I would go to sleep at night and struggle to sleep because my whole nervous system was saying, like, what if she dies overnight? What if you wake up in the morning? And this became like a thought that I would end my day with. What if I wake up and she's not here? And so it was a thought that I never thought would happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in a situation like this and you're living in the same household, and so you see it every day. It's not like you leave and you get a break from it. It's like you're waking and living story in your environment. And then you add like COVID onto it and you're in the house together. There's no real running from it. You have to see it. So when I would wake up and because again, I was the one that was in school full time, I would be home with her oftentimes alone and I would just see all the parts, right? Like the good, bad, the ugly, the really hard days when she'd wake up and it would just yeah, it's something that I don't think you can really put into words what that I guess it's more of like an anticipatory grief.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you hold on to the really good days where things are looking up, and you have to be steady with the really hard days when you don't know what's happening. And I feel like it's one of those experiences that you don't really know how to put into words, but until you've gone through it, you understand what that's like. It's a constant living in unknown because in a situation with like a stage 4 cancer diagnosis and caring for a loved one, you're constantly in and out of appointments, constantly in and out of like it feels like you're at the mercy of the doctors, right? Because you're doing everything that you can. I remember we were taking her to like naturopaths, we're consulting all these people. She's got energy healers and Reiki coming to the home, right? And so we're at, like everything. I'm like thinking of what we can do and just throwing it all at this cancer. But at the end of the day, no matter how much effort we were putting in, it kind of felt like we were still at the mercy of her tests and exams. And I just remember going to the cancer agency and I have to say like I have such a hard relationship with that place because it was a place where there was a lot of trauma that started, and also it's a place of healing too, so it's kind of hard to put into words, but I think what was really helpful for me was seeing my mom's attitude. She had a very different attitude about all of this than I did, and she was the one going through it. This woman still had a really positive attitude, and I think that really saved her in the grand scheme of things because she didn't actually let the fear of cancer take over. She had a very optimistic attitude, and I remember borrowing that from her.
Mhm.
And she said something to me one time because there was a whole situation that was happening around the mandates where for a period of time, unless you were kind of doing the things, you couldn't go in to the hospital appointments unless you had all your shots and all that stuff, and you couldn't be with your loved one during their chemotherapy.
Mhm.
And I remember there being a time where I would drop her off and she would see on my face like how anxious I was or how difficult this was. And she looked at me and she said, I think this is harder for you than it is for me. And she's like, you need to just chill out a little bit because for me, this is actually like I'm getting out of the house. I'm chatting up with the nurses and I've made so many friends here. And she just had like she was excited to go and I would pick her up and we'd go and drive around and go for walks and like it became like a social experience for her and I think it also became one of those things where when we have something that's calling her heart to step into, she had that too, where she would share with me, my call is to not take stress on anymore because she was so connected to the fact that stress had done a lot of this. And anyhow, I know I'm going on a
Wow.
tangent, but the grief was, it was a strange type of grief to be with because the loss isn't obvious. It is incremental. When you see someone that you care for kind of dwindling a little bit in what you see, her identity had shifted to being like the mom, to being the person that needed care. And, you have to shift with that identity and step up to be more like the parent in a situation like
Mhm.
that. And yeah, it was hard because there was a lot of transitions that were happening and the grief was rapid. The grief was like, "Hey, I remember my mom that would like cook up a storm and she'd always be so bubbly to she can't get up and she can't take a shower." And so now there's grief there. There's grief of the unknown. There's the anticipation. I remember one time we were in a grief and loss class in school
Mhm.
and I remember there was a case study that we were working on, and it was the exact situation that I was in. And I thought that my grief had been dealt with until that case study that we were working on, and I just broke out into tears. And I remember our grief instructor saying, sometimes this happens when we're in classes like this, where we are actually in lifetime being impacted by the very thing we're studying. That's the beautiful thing about the type of school we went to because it was so experiential and that was able to come up in front of everybody. And yeah, so the grief was it was ever present and it was hard to conceptualize because it was a constant.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. And even just what you shared, it almost like you guys swapped spots. The mom became the daughter and the daughter became the mom, right? Because you're taking care of her. And that's a whole identity shift in itself for both
Yeah.
of you, right? And also just the grief too, because to really normalize it is that it impacts the entire family unit, right? It's not just your
Mhm.
mom who's the one with the diagnosis. Of course, she's going through her own journey and her own grief, but you and your siblings and your whole household is also grieving. And they're also going through all these changes, like you said, the way she used to be, and there's change in that. And seeing what your mom used to be to what she is now, there's loss there. And it impacts us in different ways, but it does equally impact the family members as much as it does the parents. And I never really realized this. And I just thought, well, no, because I think in a lot of times people think, well, I'm not the one going through it. So it's almost like you feel you shouldn't, you should yourself. You're like, well, I'm not the one going through it. So I shouldn't feel sad or I shouldn't feel depressed or, whatever, fill in the blank with whatever emotion you feel. But it wasn't until my family and I went through my whole journey and I realized, and it took me a long time, was that, whoa, hold on. And it happened in a really, I guess, not in the best way. There was an argument between me and my sister, and things had been said, and I had to stop and take a pause. And through our conversation, was like, whoa, you guys are also going through it. And my sister had
Mm.
said something. We were arguing, actually. I was in a very angry state at that phase of my grief, and I was mad. I was on edge. I was short. And so, like, truthfully, everyone around me was walking on eggshells. And I didn't really know that until my sister said that to me. And she said something about, I didn't know you felt that way. And those words just like struck something in me. And that's when I pulled back and realized, like, how would they know? We're not mind readers. And then I
Mhm.
realized she's like, we're also going through it. Our whole family dynamic has shifted. And it makes me emotional too. But like the point I'm trying to bring through is it impacts every single person in that household and in different ways. And it's hard. It's not one's better than the other or that person should feel less or more. It just is.
Just
And
is.
yeah.
Yeah, and your story is really powerful around this too, because you're so right. Like when one thing happens to someone, especially when we live in a collectivist sort of society in like our culture, everybody is impacted by something that is happening for one person. And you're like a testament to that experience too, right? With like your diagnosis and everything that you had to navigate, and how that sort of secondary grief really plays a part for everyone as well. And not knowing sort of what to do at that point, right? And I, even like in my family, like, yeah, I might have been the person that was doing a lot of the emotional support for her and like the logistical support, but that also shifted over time because everyone gets hit with this very differently, and everyone navigates this very differently. And I have to say, like, I'm so grateful to have had like my siblings and my family, because we were all going through it together, right? Everybody was so impacted. And I also think that we all show it very differently. Some of us are like, show it more privately, and some people are more like outwardly showing it. And so you're recognizing how the system is all impacted by it.
Mhm.
And then going through that space of like, okay, everyone's sort of taking a role, and everyone's doing what they can within that role. And we also had this kind of agreement with my siblings and I and my sister-in-law that we have each other, and like we can sort of grieve with one another, but we're not going to show this to mom. Like we're going to be really strong in front of her. So it was really nice to just to be able to have each other in all of this as well, because again, she's like all of our mom in it. And that's, yeah, it's a really hard thing when someone like that is impacted. Even if it's just one family member, everybody is
Yeah.
impacted. And then there's the dynamics of like, how that all shows up, and that's like
Mhm.
a whole other whole
That's
other
a whole
thing.
other conversation. But yeah, because we all grieve differently. We all show up differently. Our emotions show up differently. Our processing, our capacity, our window of tolerance, and like what else is going on. Because it's not only that, we have our own lives still happening. Life doesn't just stop, right? For anyone.
Totally.
So life is still happening. Challenges are still happening in your day to day. And so it's really complex. That's why when you hear people say grief is so complex, it's so compounded. This is why, because there's so many layers and aspects to it. But I just thought, yeah, for you to share that part of your story, because I think it's just so important. And a lot of people go through that. It's very common, right? To have to step up and take care and also go through your own journey and all of that. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious, was there anything that helped you or what did help you through that process? For anyone who's listening, that might be like, oh shit,
Yeah.
like I'm in the same position as Harj. What would you say has been the most helpful or anything that you'd want listeners to hear?
Yeah, I think what was helpful, one was obviously like family, like us having each other.
Yeah.
Um, but on a more personal level, I actually think that getting myself really busy in school was the greatest gift for me at that time, because it allowed me to switch my brain a little bit. So if you're finding like you're in the depths of something that is really difficult, do your best to find the thing that's going to put you in a different mode as well. If it's taking up a skill, if it's enrolling yourself in something, if it's taking interest in some sort of hobby, like find something that still makes life feel somewhat normal in the midst of the most abnormal experience that you're going through. School brought a level of routine and security and normalness into my life at that time. And so that was a saving grace. But also just being able to receive support at that time. Like if you're someone that struggles with receiving support, this is probably the best opportunity to allow yourself to be vulnerable and allow people to step in and be there for you in whatever capacity they have access to. I think those were the really, really important things. And honestly, turning to God, that was like a huge, huge part of my life that started to develop quite deeply. And yeah, just knowing that there was like something that was bigger, there was a higher power that was orchestrating and supporting this entire thing. And I also think that in combination with bringing some sort of normalcy, whether that was school, friendships, I would oftentimes say to friends too, when we hang out, can we not talk about this? Like,
Mm,
unless, I really need support around something or I'm having a really hard week, I just loved knowing that they were there, but when we were spending time together, I'd say, "Can we talk about something else?" Because I didn't want my entire life to become it already felt all consumed by grief, right, and
yeah.
fear. And it was so important that when we were spending time together, being social, I needed something else. I needed to like, have that break. So give yourself that opportunity, even if you feel guilty doing it, because there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot
Mhm.
of guilt in enjoying life in the midst of really hard times, but you got to find those little glimmers, those moments that feel like life is worth it
Mhm.
when it feels like it's really tough. If I'm being really honest with you, this is advice that I feel like I integrated into my life a little bit later in the journey. When she was diagnosed and school was starting, I did not have that type of empathy or compassion. I didn't feel like I had time or energy for that. People would always say, "Slow down, you gotta take care of yourself." And I'd say, "I actually can't right now. I have everything in my body is telling me to throw everything at this diagnosis and do everything I can to be a support." And people would say, "Oh, but you gotta take care of yourself. You gotta go out and enjoy yourself." And I absolutely rejected that because I don't think I actually had access to that. So if you're in that, I think it's okay to admit that and to say, "I'm not there right now."
Mhm.
And I do feel like I need to get to a place before I can really bring that forward. You have to have acceptance for where you're at in your grief journey. I think that's one of the best ways to get to the next part of your grief journey. And um, sometimes that's just the reality of it.
Mhm. I love everything you shared. And yeah, there is a level of acceptance that has to come at certain stages and just certain phases of the grief journey, depending on where you are, because you're right. It's going to be really hard to move forward when you're in this like stuck place. And again, like we always talk about this, is like time is not linear, grief is not linear. It's going to come and go. It's going to ebb and flow, as does life in general. But there is a level of like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. And if you're in a really dark and heavy space in that moment, it's like it's not forever. It's
Yeah.
temporary and it's going to take time, but it's not forever. And so I think, yeah, I love what you shared there around just all of that, like what helped you, and to even just name what you said, like, and be honest about that, that back then it didn't feel like that.
Yeah, it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel I would get annoyed when somebody would say, "Oh, well, you know what? Just be grateful for the time that you have with her now and, remember not to get too caught up in this." And I would say, that was too early for
Mhm.
me to hear
Yeah.
something like that, and I think that's something that you just have to be really honest with yourself, like, when you're in the throes of it, sometimes you're not going to be able to implement the things that we're saying,
Yeah.
and that's okay, you will get there eventually,
Hmm.
but it's okay to be honest with where you're at in those moments and know that I know it sounds really cliché, but it always is temporary. You don't
Hmm.
ever end up living there forever, right? Life will move you through the stages of grief,
Yeah.
whether you want it or not. It will
Yeah.
happen. And I also say, like, lean on your community. Like, really genuinely lean on your community, even if it's your neighbors. We'd have neighbors that would drop off food. We'd have
Mhm.
neighbors that just came to check in and, like, lean on them, right? Because this is sort of what this is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And one other thing I want to pull from what you shared, 'cause I think it's so important, is like you said about telling your friends what you need. I think it's really important also. And it can be hard to do that, but it's also important to speak our needs or put some boundaries in place. And like you said, you tell your friends, I'd love to hang, but I don't want to talk about this or
Yeah,
that. And I
I
think
just don't
that
want
helps. And I think it also helps for friends, family, or loved ones to also know, because none of us really know because we don't know what the person actually needs. And again, going back to
Totally.
we're not mind readers, right? Like I assumed all these things and then they weren't true. And then my sister was also experiencing something in her own way, but it was like, yeah, we're not mind readers. And I think that can be hard sometimes. And it is discomforting, right? It's hard to sit with a loved one when they're in so much pain. But I like what you shared, and again, it's not easy to do that. I know it wasn't for me at the beginning to speak what I needed, or to speak your boundaries, and that takes work. But I think it is important, and so good for you for advocating for what you needed during that time.
Thank you. And it was really interesting and eye-opening, kind of like that moment you had with your sister. I remember a friend saying to me, like, I didn't know that I had felt this way until there was enough time that passed. And I remember saying to my friend, I don't. There was an age-old question every single time, like, how's your mom doing? How's she doing? What's going on? And I remember one point saying, she's good, and I actually don't wanna talk about this right now. I would rather us just, like, have fun and talk about other things, talk about normal life things, because as soon as you get back into the home, like, everything is gonna be abnormal again, right? You're living with cancer, and cancer isn't just, like, in the person, it's in the home.
Mhm.
And so you start to like really crave something life-giving. And I remember she said something so wonderful to me that I think a lot of people could resonate with. She said, I'm asking because I don't want you to think that I'm not there for you. If I stop asking, it might feel like I'm not there with you in it. And she said, "So I'm doing it because I really want you to know that, like, I'm here and I'm supporting you." And she said, "So if I don't ask, it's obviously just because you've requested me to, but I'm also over asking because I just want you to know that I'm here." And for some people, if you don't ask, it can be seen as really rude or not okay,
Mhm.
right? So I just said, you know what, to everyone, I appreciate all this love and support, and when I have updates and when I have things to share, just leave it to me and I'll do that. But the best way that I can receive support right now is let's just have a good time. Let's just experience life and do the things as best as we possibly can. Because your friends that are going through grief in every single moment. And whether it's anticipatory grief or they've gone through a death or any sort of transition, that grief is in their body no matter what. And
Mhm.
so they've never forgotten that grief is there. And so sometimes these moments are actually really important to just have normalcy back, right? And like,
Which is so true, right? Because like you said, you're eating, breathing, sleeping that. And so it's
mm,
nice to pull out from that. And just for anyone who's listening, some people might actually want that. Like this is just what Harj is saying works
totally.
for her and that she advocated for that. But there are people that actually want to be asked. They want to
Mhm.
be talk about it all the time. And I think that's
Yeah.
okay too. And it just depends on what the person needs. And again, there's a right or wrong. It's just what our own needs are, right? For you, it was like you needed some sort of escapism and some normalcy,
Mhm.
like you said, and some fun. But for someone else, it might be, yeah, you know what? I don't mind you asking. Like,
Yeah,
I don't mind you
totally.
asking how my mom is or how my brother is or whoever it is, right? And again, it comes back to it's important to speak to it, and it's up to us individually, right? To speak
Totally.
to that. And that goes back to the assumption, right? Like your friend, your story with that too is like, well, if I don't ask, then you're gonna think I don't care or I'm not with you, which is for you
Yeah.
was like, no, actually, I know you're there, like we're good. But to someone else, it could be like, yeah, this person hasn't reached out in so long, like not even in anything. That actually really hurts. And it
Mhm.
just depends on where you're at and what your experience is and what you actually need.
Totally. Yeah, and I'll clarify too, like, our cancer journey with her was not a short one, it was a long one,
Mm.
and so I think there was a time and place where that was really needed and important, and then there became a point where I was like, "Okay, I need to be able to, like, find myself again and to be back in some sort of normalcy of life." But grief is so difficult because on the one hand, it's like we don't really know how to navigate it, and then for the people that are supporting, there isn't one way to support either. It changes,
Yeah.
right? It moves and it can be really murky.
Yeah.
And I think this is like when, yeah, it's being in it. It will teach you a lot. It will teach you a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know that can be a really hard topic to sometimes to talk about, but I'm so glad for your experience and for you for sharing it openly and vulnerably because it is a lot, kind of reliving that sometimes. Yeah, there's something you mentioned I wanted, which is such a great transition. You talked about God, and you talked about that
Yeah.
being such a very big part of that journey. I think probably maybe always, but more so you said like during when your mom was going through it. And so you and I have had countless conversations. We have them with our groups of friends. Like, we love this, and we just, the philosophical, thought provoking, the like, what is life? What is death? All of that. And so I just thought it'd be really fun to bring that forward publicly and to bring that conversation to light because I obviously am very passionate about it. I know you are. We love the deep conversations, we love the depth and the intimacy. And I think a lot of times people are like, what is spirituality? What is God? Who is God? Is it a he? Is it a she? Is it a, like, what is it? Um, just spirituality, like, what does that mean? And I think it's going to be different for every single person. I think we can get so caught up in it has to be one way because that's what everyone else is telling us. And obviously, there's a lot of noise online and externally of who you should follow and what you should believe in and all of that. And I don't subscribe to that. I think it's like what it means to us individually. And no one knows, no one has the answer. So we're all just trying to figure it out. But I'm just really curious of what does spirituality, God, oneness, universe, like what does that mean to you personally when you hear those words? And you spoke to
It's
God. So yeah.
yeah, it's changed so much in my life, but what I've noticed recently is it's come back to what I've always felt in my heart as a child. So I grew up in a house that was like not super religious, but like kind of, right? Like culturally religious, I'll put it that way. Um, and I feel like as a child, I really connected with religion. I connected with God like more than maybe even my parents at the time because I had this like knowing in my heart that there's like something else other than my parents that was speaking with me, that was like guiding me even as a kid. And I think that's the part that was like always craving more depth even as a teen. Like I was like I knew that there was so much more to life. I knew that there was a God in the faith that we grew up in Sikhi. The idea is that God is formless, God is genderless, God is not like a being or anything like that, but God is in a lot of ways you could just kind of say that is a creator. And it's again, it's like doesn't have a face, there's no name really. It's just that there is this being that is God. It's like an energy of some sort. And I remember always questioning that and going, "Well, I don't really know," because the human mind always wants to put absolutes, like binaries to something. It always wants to have the information concrete. And so I feel like for a little while I got lost, and then I went into like deeper spiritual work, I think during that transition in my 20s, later 20s. And I was like, okay, let me actually sink my teeth into what people around me are saying in like the coaching world. And, spirituality was becoming a lot more mainstream. And I just dove right in. I was doing all the things. And I understood God to be like an energy source. I understood God to be part of the universe. I was really in that language. And then I kind of came back to a little bit more of a foundation and recognizing God to be during this time of like mom's cancer journey. I didn't have an answer, but I knew there was a feeling. There was like a recognition that there's like something that is a higher power. And sometimes you have those moments in life where you just like you've shared before, like a coming to knees moment
Mhm.
where you just have a conversation with something outside of yourself. I think it's an acknowledgement of how limiting human faculties can be in the face of really big life challenges. We try to figure everything out ourselves, and I think that there's only so far that we have a capacity of resolving. I think the rest of that really is in connection to some sort of higher power. Whatever it is that you believe in, it's basically a surrender, right, to something outside of yourself. It's a trust towards something outside of yourself. It's a deep respect for the fact that, like, it's all going to work out. I'm not going to be the one that has to figure it all out. It's going to play out on its own. So I think as of recently, I mean, I'm somebody, my whole life has been so curious and interested in how people receive God and how people believe God to be. I grew up with the ability, I mean, with my dad, he'd always say to me, like, nobody's religion is wrong. And I remember him saying specifically, it's the same God, but we all have different ways of actually reaching that God, and God has kind of come to different parts of the world and speaks to people differently, so they all sort of reach the same destination, which is the place we were all created from. But we all just get there differently. So for some people, it might be in like the Gurdwara, it might be in a church, it might be in a masjid, it might be in a Buddhist temple, but we're essentially going to the same place. And he said that to me as a really small child. And that, like, I was like, okay, cool. I understand that. He was basically saying, without the dogma, we're going to the same place. In my more recent years, I have been putting a lot more foundation into what my beliefs are. And I think for me, it's come back to recognition that it's this feeling, it's a connection to a higher power, it's a connection to a creator. Um, and I'm still evolving in figuring out what that is exactly.
Yeah. Oh gosh, Harj. I love all that you shared. It's such a big conversation. I just want to preface this with that. So we're just touching on it and speaking to our own experiences. And I love how real and honest you are too. And it is ever evolving, right? As we change, as we grow, as we come to know ourselves on a deeper level, our beliefs change, our values change, our perspective changes, like life altering circumstances might impact that as well. But yeah, I feel that too. It's like it's an energy and it's kind of hard to put into words. Like I was thinking about this, what does it mean to me? And it's really hard to put it into words. And it is just this, it sounds so simple, but it's not. So I really want to acknowledge that. It's just this inner knowing, it's this feeling, it's this connection. Like there's something else guiding us, there's something else beyond me. And I came to that in basically, like I say to a lot of times, is a God help me, save me moment when I'm on my hands and knees. And, I had this big awakening and I've shared about it before, but something in me, like I can feel it in my whole body. Like there's something else. I am not alone.
Mhm.
And for me, that was the first interaction with it. And since then, I'm learning and I'm evolving and I'm growing and I relate to a lot of what you shared. But it's just like, it also brings me comfort. And I don't know if it does that with you too. I know you talked a lot about trust and faith and, that and that connection piece. And we all need connection, but it's like we have family and friends, but this is a different level of connection. But when I'm in my darkest of dark times, I'm like, okay, I'm actually not alone. Even though I feel alone, there is something that's guiding me, my higher self, God. And that brings me a lot of comfort and solace knowing that because I'm sure a
Yeah.
lot of people can relate when you're in those moments, you feel very isolated. They're very isolating. And so for me, that's just what I found. And I feel okay. I'm having conversations with God and talking to God and just having someone to talk to and bounce ideas off of. Honestly, like that's what I do. And I know it's gonna sound really weird for people who are like not yet there, but it's helped so much. And it's just that energy feeling. And it's not even I really like to emphasize this too, is it's not just even in the dark moments. It's even in the blissful, happy, joyous moments that I'm like, thank you, God. It's just something that's so second nature. I don't even think about it. I'll wake up. I'm like, oh, thank you, God. The sun is shining. There's always something. So
Mhm.
it's not just in the dark moments because that would be conditional, right? There's
Mhm.
conditions there. But I think it's everywhere in
Mm.
gratitude. God is in gratitude all the time, right? When we're appreciative of something, it's just there's an energy there that's outside of us. We can't see it. I think that's the problem too. Is like you said, humans want to be able to see things tangible and want it all played out and written and all of that. But it's like we can't see it, but it's around us.
And it's felt. So, like, even just in reading scripture, whether it's taking the time to, I've delved into reading, our six scriptures and like the Japji Sahib and understanding, what is being said and really doing the research and having deep conversations in community with Sangeet, right, about what is the idea of God, and also taking the time to read a little bit of the Bible, the Quran, and all the different sort of um, messages that are coming through about what God is. There's such a, I think for me in the conversations that I've had, the experiences that I've had, and even working with clients that have wanted to bring this up because I always ask clients in the beginning, first session, right? We do our psychosocial assessments, and I always ask, is there a belief system that you follow, whether it be, a spiritual connection or a religious connection? Is there something that you follow that you feel like will be a part of our therapeutic experience? Because I, as your counselor, want to know so that I can, brush up and learn about what it is that you follow, because it most likely will come up and it will be a part of your healing journey. So I always like to know, and I have had the blessing of working with clients that come from different religious backgrounds and different spiritual beliefs also. And I feel like what it always comes back to this idea that there is a felt experience in the relationship to God. And so even if we can't see, it's not tangible, everyone has like a felt experience in some shape or form that comes up when we have this conversation. And even if somebody refers to God as the universe, it's like, well, what you're describing is that there's something bigger than you that is not you
Mm.
that you can surrender to, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
It's a feeling, yeah. And again, this is such a big conversation, but I just love it. I love having these conversations and getting perspectives and insights because I like what you shared too. And I believe that too. God is one, no matter what you follow or where you go, whether you go to church or the temple or the Gurdwara, like wherever it is, we're all aiming for the same thing, right? Like
yeah.
but we're doing it in our own different ways. And it's not right or wrong. It's just it just is. And
It
so, and
just is.
again, it's just that felt experience and the felt energy that you feel. And even me, I love listening to worship music. I don't read the
Mm,
Bible. I haven't. It sparked my interest. So maybe one day I might, but I don't follow that. But I love worship music because it's the energy that it gives me. And if God is one, that's just what it is. I love the
yeah,
lyrics. I love how it makes me feel. My heart opens. But
yeah,
I think that speaks to it for a lot of things. A lot of people who aren't Sikh listen to like Kirtan, listen to,
mhm,
Bhat and stuff, but they're not from the Sikh community. But it
yeah.
comes back to that it's a felt feeling, it's a felt sensation.
And people have spent lifetimes and lifetimes trying to figure this out. And people have dedicated their whole lives to being scholars and figuring out, okay, so what is this thing? And I think it's only recently the scientists have actually discovered something that like these scriptures have been saying for so long, which is there's some evidence that there is a God, that they're actually finding evidence of this, that there's an entity that exists that is bigger than us, that is higher than us. But all of us, like this whole of humanity has been trying to put it into this category and trying to say, hey, this is the right way. No, we got to figure it out. No, 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 this is the way. And it's like, listen, your way is your way. And
Mhm.
I think you're guided your way for a reason, right? Like you're being guided. And I think yeah, I really, really love this conversation because it really just says at the end of the day, like the inspiration even behind like my counseling clinic's name, One Truth Wellness, came from this concept. Like it was born from this conversation of at the end of the day there's there's one truth. Wherever we try to categorize that one truth, all of us are still connecting to a level of oneness, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, intentionally or unintentionally. There is a oneness that flows through every single individual, whether it's regardless of your political beliefs, whether it's your religious beliefs. There is a level of humanity that exists in every person's heart. And I think that is the truth, because you will have somebody who comes from a totally different demographic, a totally different religious age, like gender, everything. And you spend enough time with one another, your hearts will connect. And I think that when we strip everything away, there's a level of humanity in each person. And I have a belief that most people are good. A lot of people are just carrying a lot of pain. And I think that, yeah, at the center of everything, like there's a oneness that flows through all. And I find that to be the truth. And so in our counseling work, a lot of times with clients, I'm guiding them and trying to support them in finding out what their truth is.
Mm.
Like if we were to turn a flashlight on in your own self, what is it that is your truth? Like what is it that we can find that we can bring forward? Because a lot of people are walking around carrying other people's truths and not necessarily knowing what ours is. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's kind of the inspiration even just behind the clinic name was
I love
one.
that. Oh my gosh. So much. Just so much yes, I agree with that, and yeah, just such a cool, like, insight into, what that is, and I think that's so beautiful. Love, love, love. Let's transition out into closing a little bit, but I have some fun question here. Reflective question, then we'll talk about your counseling practice. A good segue into what you just shared about One Tooth Wellness. If you could sit down for a coffee date with your younger self, how do you imagine that conversation would go? What would you want to say to that 10-year, 15-year-old, 19-year-old, even 25-year-old when it was about to start coaching? What would you say to those years old Harj?
I would say to my 10-year-old self that everything's gonna work out, don't worry about it, have fun. My 15-year-old self, I would say, "You're on the right track, don't give up, don't doubt yourself." And I would say, "You're good enough, like, you're good enough as you are. You don't have to perform to fit in with anybody." She really, like, wanted to fit in, and she did everything she could to, like, just be, who she wanted to be, but she didn't know how to do it. So she tried to fit in, and I would say, like, don't work so hard to fit in. Like, you're good as you are. You're capable. You are smarter than you're giving yourself credit for, and it's not too overwhelming to go after your dreams. You don't have to second guess it. She was somebody who would have, like, soaked up this type of conversation. I would say to my 25-year-old self, I would say, like, keep going, like, you are on track. And I would also say to all versions of myself, 10, 15, 25, I would say the biggest thing is, like, don't doubt yourself. Like, you have more than you know. You have more than you know, and you're living in a society that's telling you otherwise, but, like, deep down in your soul, you know. So you don't need to doubt yourself. And I would say, if I could, start sooner. Like, start sooner. You're like, because there was so much that I was doing. I was backtracking, I was going there, I was trying to figure this out. And I would go back to her and say, don't do that. Like, start sooner. And yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. Yeah. I just love that. I love reflecting. I reflect on it often too. And it's like all the insecurities, the self doubts, the low self worth, the lack of confidence, the comparison, the not feeling good enough. Like we all struggle with that to some level or to some extent. And now knowing where we are at now, it's like, whoa, no, keep going. Don't give up. Like you said, just have trust. And it's, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's such a cool experience to put ourselves in that place of what would I tell those versions of myself? How can things, could have been different? I feel like it empowers, even though we're talking to the younger version, it empowers the me now today, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's like,
agree
yeah,
with
my
that.
younger self needed to hear that, but it's like my now 30 something year old self needs to hear that right now too.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so powerful.
absolutely.
I love that. Okay, let's talk about your counseling practice. I know you've touched on it. Do you want to just tell us who you work with? Is there a certain demographic? And how would you describe your approach to counseling?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All the good stuff. I would say I work with adults. And when I say adults, I mean like late teens to any age above that. Typically, my demographic has been university students, people that are in the crux of like finding themselves and who they are. A lot of people that are first time to counseling. I have a lot of people that are like ready to kind of take that step, but they're really scared to do that, to meet themselves. I take an approach of a very holistic, seeing the person as a full person and recognition that their nervous system is not always set up for deep healing. And so I like to work with my clients to support them in first learning who their nervous system is and what their nervous system is doing. And so focus very somatically as well as all the sort of modalities and clinical techniques and things that we learn. I work a lot with anxiety. I find that that's a common thing that comes through. Um, I work really, really deeply on understanding what our anxiety is and what it needs and what its programming is. So a lot of the work that I do with clients is like deeper, a little bit of psychoanalytic work in recognizing what it means, where it comes from, what its position has been in our life, and then working through the upgrade system. I always like to say it's like an iOS upgrade. It's like a software upgrade. Our nervous system is, we are a container that continues to grow, but oftentimes our software is stuck in maybe an old trauma response, or it's been, yeah, it's in a certain time. And a lot of that conflict can come from the fact that like our life is growing, but our nervous system is still playing out a role. So I like to work with that upgrade system in the body, which takes a lot of time, but that consistency can really pay off for clients, and then finally catching up to like their truth. um, I work a lot when I mentioned like earlier, like esoteric, with a lot of type of therapies that are bigger than sort of what's in our mind, like a philosophical way, right? I use a lot of Gestalt therapy. I like to bring in some Jungian therapy and sort of dream work and things like that. So I feel like there is a certain demographic that tends to come through my door. All cultures, all ages within adult ages, and also I work with both men and women. So it's been really cool to sort of see like the shifts in demographics that come through. But ultimately, a lot of the people that I work with are navigating anxiety, they're navigating OCD, they're navigating life transitions, self worth, all of those types of things, maybe asking themselves really big questions, and identity work is something that's really big in my practice as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, so a lot of that type of work.
Yeah, I love that. So great. And are you taking on new clients now for anyone who's listening and wanting to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am taking on new clients. I do have in person and virtuals. I love people, wanting to come in person and get a feel for the space and being, sort of that sort of in-person experience with their counselor. So my office is in Kitsilano, for anybody that's familiar with the area. But I also take virtual. So yeah, my books are open, and I'm always like just so excited to meet new people and new clients.
Love it. I'm going to put everything in the show notes for anyone who's listening, but it's onetruthwellnesscounseling.com, I think, is your website, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so I'll
correct.
put that in the show notes. So if you want to reach out to Harj, then yeah, by all means. Thank
Awesome.
you, Harj. Okay, I'm gonna have one last question for you, and then we're gonna go into a rapid
Right.
fire to close off.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
fun. Thank you so much first for sharing everything you did and having that conversation. I always love our conversations, and I hope it was helpful for anyone who's listening. I think you shared a lot of perspective there and just your own story of where you came from and what led you into counseling and talking about your practice. It's almost like a full circle moment from when you said that you used to go to your high school counselor and like enjoy
Totally.
doing that. You were what, 15, and here you are like 20 years, like 20 plus years later, and you're living that dream. Like,
It's wild.
so cool.
It's so wild.
Yeah.
Life never fails to surprise me in
Yeah.
these ways.
I
So
love that.
cool.
And so the reason why I bring that up too is I talk a lot about post traumatic growth on this show and in general in my personal life, in my professional life. And, we talk about that often about going through hard things, but then having the ability to overcome them. And your story is a testament to that. And so for anyone who might be going through a really hard time right now, they're feeling we're stuck, they're overwhelmed, what's one message of hope, of strength, of, I don't know, any sort of empowerment or encouragement you would want to leave listeners with?
Yeah. Be with yourself where you are. Do not try to fast track where you are. Right now is the perfect moment, even if it's really, really difficult. Meet yourself where you are. And if it gets to be too much, allow yourself to be vulnerable and ask for help. I think that's one of the biggest things. We do not have to suffer alone, and to reach out for support, and honestly, like, to just be with where you're at. And I have to say time and time again, and I have had really, really tough moments in life where I felt like I can't come out of this. It always gets better. It always gets better. Some time, shape, form. It's never permanent. And I think sometimes having that just tucked, whether you believe it in the moment or not, having that tucked away in the back of your mind can be a saving grace when you need it. But to know that this moment is not forever.
Love it. What a perfect end to that. Thank you. Yes. And I hope anyone who's listening, hope you really enjoyed this conversation. And even if you reflect on it, even take one small thing that really sparks something in you and you lean into that, reflect on it. Like Harj said, be with yourself, sit with it. And I always say curiosity over judgment with no shame, no guilt, no blame. We're all where we are at, and it just is. And so thank
100%.
you. Yeah.
One last thing I would say on that is that's been really helpful for me in really tough moments, whether it's, I'm having a mental health breakdown or I'm struggling with something in life at that time, is we always want to push past and we want to fast track the healing. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is that one step at a time. And I always like to say it's one shower at a time. If you were like in the thick of things, if you can get up and just take the shower, that is the thing that you do for the day. That's what you do for the day. You get up the next day, you take the shower. And I find that that is typically always the step that then leads to the next step, to the next step. But if that's all you got, that's all you got. And I think it's more metaphorical of like do what you have access to and allow that to be the thing that kind of guides you to the next.
Love it. Mic drop. Love it. Love it. Okay, awesome. Let's gonna do a rapid fire. It's basically a this or that.
Okay,
Ready?
I'm
Ready,
ready.
ready. Okay, I probably know half of these, but one-on-one,
Probably.
one-on-one, quality time or group hangs,
Oh, one-on-one.
voice notes or long form text,
Voice notes.
road trip or plane ride,
Oh, it's rapid fire road trip.
road trip with your music jamming, Mariah Carey.
Oh, you know it.
Save money or spend money?
And this season of my life, save money.
Take pictures or live in the moment?
Live in the moment.
Always early or always late?
You mean like what am I or
Yeah.
most likely always late. I'm mostly on time, but never actually early.
Last one. Podcast or playlist?
Podcast.
Ooh, I know you love your
It's
music. I'm
changed. I
shocked.
know. I know. It's changed.
Oh,
I would say at this moment, podcast.
oh, interesting. Awesome. Okay. Thanks for that. It's always so fun. What'd you say?
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, that's a wrap. We'll see everyone for the next episode.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Such an amazing